Hello, I'm Michael Berkman, Director of the McCourtney Institute for Democracy.
And I'm Chris Beam, Managing Director of the McCourtney Institute. We've had a few conversations already. We talked about what happened with the 2016 election, and we've had a conversation about how the Democrats respond to this new reality. And now we just want to take a moment to talk about what we're going to be looking for over the next months or so with respect to the Trump administration and how we get to the point of a Trump administration. So what will you be looking for, Michael? What are you going to be evaluating?
Well, there's a lot, but let's start with who fills all these positions in the administration, not only the cabinet, but levels below that. So, one thing that was clearly notable during the campaign was the way many Republicans avoided Donald Trump, said they'd never go to work for Donald Trump. And his campaign did not necessarily bring in an A-list of the Republican Party.
So a lot of old folks, a lot of not well-regarded people.
That's right, and not a huge number of presently elected officials, for example. So I'm curious to see, I'll be watching with great anticipation to see who he really does bring into his cabinet. To what extent does he reach out? Does he bring in Democrats? Does he bring in a diverse cabinet? Does he bring in old establishment hands, which is kind of against his brand, but they know what they're doing? Or
do we genuinely consider, people that most Americans would regard as unserious, like Ben Carson or Sarah Palin, people like that?
Right.
Yeah. In that regard, I would say that the one thing I'm going to be concerned about and looking for is what happens with respect to this administration and climate change.
Yeah, so start with the people that he appoints.
Right, exactly. This was, I think, a real failure coming out of the debates. It was not even asked once out of the four debates, really, when you're talking about the vice presidential debate as well. And you had Donald Trump saying that he thought it was a hoax perpetuated by China. So what happens moving forward with regards to these issues that, I and a lot of other people regard as the most important of this administration is going to be, critical to see who gets put into Department of Energy, Department of Interior, things like that.
Well, and head of the EPA.
Right.
And I mean, my understanding from the person running the EPA transition as part of Chris Christie's transition team is a climate change denier.
Right.
And names that have been bandied about are also climate change deniers. So I can't say I'm particularly optimistic
and
about
most of what Obama was able to do regarding climate change was in the form of executive actions, which are all imminently undoable.
Yeah, Congress has pretty well let us know that they're not going to act on climate change. So it has to come out of the administration.
And this is right on the heels of the Paris Accord, which was the most significant document by far in terms of an international agreement, actually becoming operative.
Yes, this is going to be a real test.
A critical period.
Yeah, it'll be a real test of him on the international stage to see how he handles this, because he talked about just pulling out. I don't know if it's quite that simple. Yeah, I'm also going to be paying quite a bit of attention to, he has a bit of a reputation for being vindictive. And so far hasn't been acting that way since he's been elected. But does he go after Hillary Clinton? I mean, that to me would be an unprecedented step in American politics to actually try to criminally go after your political opponent. He's talked about it, hasn't ruled it out yet. Kellyanne Conway was asked about it. She just avoided the question. I think that's really remains to be seen.
My own suspicion is that there's just not enough to be gained with that. They got what they wanted, which is the presidency. And so at this point, first of all, you risk looking like you're,
Yeah, I don't think he's going to sue all the women who accused him either.
Exactly, right. But there's other forms of vindictiveness that are at least in question. During the campaign, as you know, Trump kicked out, said they could not come to events. Univision, Washington Post, a couple other press, Huffington Post, others that I'm not remembering right now. But it will be interesting to see how those organizations, or just the press in general, are treated.
Yeah, I mean, this is very important. I mean, the press is the watchdog, especially when you've got a Congress of the same party.
Right.
So the press really plays an important role here.
And a president who has no political experience.
Right, none at all. And so I do have a lot of concerns in terms of how he deals with the press, and I also have a lingering interest in Trump TV and whether or not that goes on under a different name, but becomes almost a propaganda arm of the White House. So there's a lot to be seen about what happened to the
There
press.
certainly were indications that if Trump were to have lost, that was what the next step was. You had Roger Ailes, you had
Jared Kushner.
Right.
Yeah.
And you had all the pieces in place to make this happen. And ostensibly, there's a lot of money to be made there. And so you just wonder.
Yeah, I guess I'll tell you what, we'll know something when we see when and if he has his first press conference, because presidents traditionally have an opening press conference within a week or so of being elected. He hasn't had a press conference in months.
Right, and as much as he got on Hillary for that,
he hasn't had one.
No, except for Sean Hannity. He really kind of
those
avoided.
Aren't press conferences.
No, it's certainly not.
Despite what Hillary Clinton said, interviews are not press conferences.
Right. So, all right, so that's it for this time. Thanks for watching, and look for more to come.